I'm back. Can everyone hear me? Sort of. Okay. I apologize. I'm on my phone for the next half an hour. I have my desktop set up to not allow me to log in between 1 and 2 to give myself like a reminder to take a break in the middle of the day. And the program works really well, as evidenced by the fact that I'm on my phone. So I can fix that in about half an hour, but not until then. But we'll go ahead and get started. Hope everyone had a nice lunch. Okay, did anyone have anything that a pressing issue, question, anything that came up before we get started? You may just have to, since I'm on my phone, you may just have to unmute, and I'm not really used to doing this on my phone. Oh, there. Do it that way. Okay, no problem. So let's once again adopt a stable, comfortable, upright position, serviceable for meditation. Thinking about keeping our feet flat and our back straight, torso open, hands in the lap, right over left with the palms upturned and the thumbs gently touching. Our eyes are gently closed or slightly open, making sure we let in enough light to remain alert. We try to maintain an awareness of not slouching, not leaning. We also let go of any unnecessary tension or rigidity in the body, just allowing the body to fall into place, adopting a stable, comfortable, upright position. We begin to let go of attending to the external world, allowing sights and sounds to be as they are without investigation. Constraining our awareness just to the body and mind. When we begin to concentrate that awareness in the present by attending closely to the physical sensation of the air as it moves into and back out of the tip of the nostrils, giving ourselves the instruction to notice quickly when anything other than that one physical sensation is arising in the mind, without judgment or frustration, to lift our awareness up from those distractions and place it gently but firmly, again and again on the breath. And then when the mind feels more calm, we generate once again a broad altruistic motivation, wanting to use this time to develop new tendencies, new habits, new ways of thinking, acting, ways that are constructive, beneficial, developing states of mind that give rise to actions that are helpful for others, wanting to distance ourselves from states of mind, from tendencies, habits that are not beneficial, not constructive, those that agitate the mind, and those that often give rise, motivate actions that can cause harm to others. Wanting to engage in this process of genuine inner transformation to be of greater and greater benefit to sentient beings. And then with that motivation, we will begin to contemplate, meditate on definite emergence, the wish to definitely emerge from suffering. Another way of thinking about this is becoming deeply familiar with the general and specific sufferings of cyclic existence. We can begin by thinking of the sufferings of the lower rungs, the worst kinds of suffering in samsara, the suffering in the animal kingdom, the fact that the animals are unable to escape hot and cold, rain, snow, fire, flood, completely exposed to the elements, no certainty with regard to their sense of safety, their ability to eat or drink, constant fear. Try to imagine experiencing those sufferings day after day. Understanding that this mind presently connected to this body has been connected to bodies in the animal realm countless times. I'm thinking of the beings in the hungry ghost realm, these long-lived beings, those experiences conditioned by pervasive hunger and thirst, a hunger and thirst that's never satisfied. Think of how painful it is to experience our own hunger and thirst even for a few hours. Think of months or years, decades, centuries, completely overwhelmed with those sufferings. Thinking of the worst suffering in samsara, what in English they call the hell realms, more energetic forms that can be reborn over and over after enduring torment. Bringing to mind whatever you may have studied of the hot hells, the cold hells, these beings live for eons, perhaps billions of Earth years, undergoing unimaginable torment. really trying to imagine all of the times that this mind has been connected to those kinds of forms. And recognizing that even in the upper realm, even in this life, I meet with unsatisfactory conditions again and again. I have to experience the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Again and again, I meet with things I do not want. I'm often prevented from getting what I do want. And so there are no places within ordinary cyclic existence where I can take rebirth, where I will have a life that is completely free of all suffering. And to review these contemplations and come to a strong determination that that is true. I think ultimately what I must renounce are the causes of cyclic existence, actions of body, speech, and mind that are mixed with the affliction, mixed with ignorance, hatred, attachment, so try to develop a weariness with having to experience these sufferings again and again without choice, under the influence of karma and affliction, being resolved to develop the mind, pursue a path of liberation, to definitely emerge from suffering. And then when you're ready, we will come back together. Any thoughts or questions? Just go ahead and mute and ask. Yeah, well, give me just a minute and I'll log in a better way. Just take me a minute, but if there are any questions, I can address those. We're all good, everybody. Okay, so that is, one way of, and of course, with renunciation, with any of these topics, you can come at it, if you can do a whole retreat on renunciation, of course, because I mean, just in that particular, we covered, three different sort of baskets of topics, the lower realms, the upper realms, and then the causes of, cyclic existence itself, delusion and karma. So, and you can take any smaller grouping of those topics, and do multiple different sessions. You could do, a whole day of just one realm of, and, I mean, you do have to work with, it's a challenging, that the topic is a challenging topic. It can feel quite heavy. Um, so if it's something that you spend a lot of time on, the mind can get quite heavy with it. Just thinking about suffering over and over and over again, it can be kind of intense. Um, Repetition is a necessary part of analytical meditation. We do by default, we have to expose ourselves to these ways of thinking again and again and again to overcome the habits that the ways of thinking that we've kind of already inculcated ourselves with prior to this new way of kind of thinking, the way that Lama Tsongkhapa says, we need to avoid thinking of samsara as a pleasure grove, and avoid thinking of it, and we need to turn away from that way of thinking. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that we should try to think of samsara as like used toilet paper, that kind of disdain, that kind of disgust or weariness that we have with it, so that we don't get caught up in the aspects of it that seem pleasurable, and we think about them in this broader context. So of course that's just one very brief way of looking at these different topics, but you can definitely spend a whole day just thinking about the animal realm, or the preta or hungry ghost realm, or the hell realm, or the, as I say, that they have different lists. I don't know, the six sufferings, the eight sufferings, the three sufferings. There's all of these different lists that you can, spend time contemplating. And then ultimately, of course, as with the Four Noble Truths, this this falls under, really partially, the truth of unsatisfactory conditions, itself. So the first noble truth, and then when you're focusing on afflictions and karma, then it's, more so the cause, the second noble truth. Um, but ultimately, as with the fourth noble truth, the third and the fourth noble truths, we're keeping in mind as well that it isn't that this is unavoidable. It isn't that that's when you get to the point where you generate that resolve to choose not to create these causes again and again and again. That is where we, with this perfect human rebirth that we have, we can avoid, intentionally avoid creating these causes of all of these sufferings. And we can dedicate ourselves to creating the causes of liberation, creating the causes of enlightenment, not just for oneself, but also, when you join that with bodhicitta, which is what we'll meditate on next, then you do that not only for your benefit, but you're doing that primarily for the benefit of others, and you're securing your own benefit kind of as a side effect of wanting to secure that benefit for all sentient beings. But there's many different ways of approaching the topic of meditating on definite emergence, but typically it would be going in more detail in one of those three baskets of contemplations, the contemplations of the suffering of the lower realms, the upper realms, and then the sort of the engine of cyclic existence, which is delusion, and karma, or affliction and karma. Anything that anybody would like to think about, address? All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll meditate on bodhicitta. Once again, let's try to adopt a comfortable upright position. And take a moment to bring our attention to the breath, concentrating on the physical sensation that accompanies the in-breath and the out-breath, and the space around the opening of the nostrils. Giving ourselves the instruction to let go of anything else that might arise in the mind as quickly as possible. And coming back to that one sensation each time distraction arises. Then again, we reassert our motivation to use this time to generate positive, constructive, beneficial states of mind, and to reduce, ultimately eliminate, destructive states of mind, engaging in this process of genuine inner transformation to be of greater and greater benefit to sentient beings. That motivation, when we reflect on the general and specific sufferings of samsara, we come to understand that they characterize not just our own lives, but the lives of every other sentient being. I try to generate the understanding that it's not sufficient to obtain our own welfare, leaving out all other sentient beings. The purpose of one's own enlightenment is to have the skills, the ability, the capacity to bring every other sentient being to their enlightenment. So we train in this attitude of bodhicitta, the 6-point cause and effect meditation. The first of these 6 steps is to recognize every other sentient being as having been one's own mother, one's own father. We generate that understanding on the basis of the reasoning of the mind itself being beginningless and endless. Recognizing that today's mind is the direct result of yesterday's mind. Each moment of mind serving as the cause of the next moment of mind. And each moment being the result of the preceding moment of mind. So mind is this unbroken continuity of moments. It existed before the coming together of the body and the womb. And in order for this body and mind to come together, we needed mother and father. And so, countless times over beginningless past lives, we've had mother and father. And you think that your mother in this life has not only been your mother this one time, but has been your mother countless times. You think that your father in this life has not only been your father this one time, but has been your father countless times. And your father has also been your mother countless times. Your mother has also been your father countless times. And think that all of your friends, all of your other relatives, all of your loved ones, they too have played the role of mother for you countless times due to the beginningless nature of your mind and their mind. And think too that strangers that you meet have played that role, even those that you have conflict with, those who you feel like have caused you harm or causing harm to others. They have played that role. To bring to mind these examples and try to get a feeling of the truth of that statement on the basis of the reasoning of the beginningless nature of mind. We must also contemplate the depth of the kindness shown to us by all of these mother sentient beings. I think that these kind mother sentient beings have protected us when we were helpless, bathing us, feeding us, clothing us, protecting us from the elements, from hot and cold. And day after day, she worried about our welfare, where we were, what we were doing, what was happening. That our first teachers were our parents. Our independence, our skills were first taught to us out of the kindness of our mother, our father. So our ability to use this life to develop our qualities is the result of that kindness. So bring to mind again examples that resonate with you, the kinds of kindnesses that are shown by the mother, the father, the caregiver, understanding that every sentient being has related to us in those ways countless times. And then we must develop the wish to repay that kindness. So we think that in this life we are incredibly fortunate, having met the perfect teachings, ourselves possessing a perfect human rebirth. I think we must do everything that we can to repay the kindness shown to us by all sentient beings. We must be responsive to the needs of sentient beings on a conventional level, helping those who are suffering. But also on an ultimate level, being able to lead them to a state beyond suffering, a state of perfect happiness, perfect bliss. These kind mother sentient beings. And then the next step is to develop a sense of affectionate love, warm heartedness, a sense of closeness to all sentient beings. And Rebbe Rinpoche says that if we really focus on the previous steps, understanding all sentient beings as having been one's mother, understanding the depth of their kindness and genuinely wishing to repay their kindness, that feeling of closeness, of warm heartedness, of affection will arise naturally. And we try to cultivate that sense of closeness, of warmth, seeing all sentient beings in a positive light, We can deepen that affectionate love into great love by recognizing that these kind mother sentient beings don't actually possess happiness or its causes, although just like oneself, they wish to be happy. They're never truly perfectly happy. So we can also develop the wish for the happiness of every sentient being without exception. And then we understand that these sentient beings not only are they bereft of true happiness, but they also meet with suffering again and again, lifetime after lifetime, having to experience the sufferings of samsara. So again, bring to mind all of the ways in which sentient beings suffer in the upper and lower realms. I think that is the condition of these kind mother sentient beings. Try to generate in the mind a strong wish for them to be free of all of that suffering. And then the next step is to generate the extraordinary wish of, or attitude of universal responsibility. So thinking it isn't sufficient to merely hope for sentient beings to be happy, to hope for them to be free of suffering, but to take responsibility oneself to bring that about, to think even by myself alone, I will free every sentient being from suffering. I will install every sentient being in a state of perfect happiness. All of these kind mother sentient beings. Try to adopt that attitude of not hoping, not waiting, but taking responsibility. And on the basis of these 6 steps, we generate the mind of enlightenment by reflecting on the fact that at the present moment we can't make good on our promise to free all sentient beings from suffering, to place them in that state of perfect happiness. We lack the ability to follow through on that sense of responsibility that we feel. So we must become capable of being able to follow through. So we must devote ourselves to doing whatever is necessary to achieve our own enlightenment, to then possess the ability to make good on that promise to sentient beings. So on this basis, we think that the purpose of my life is to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others. Here we try to absorb the mind in that determination to pursue the path of full enlightenment, to do whatever is needed to bring about the result of one's own enlightenment, so that one can actually lead every other sentient being into their enlightenment. And then when you're ready, we'll come back together. All right, we'll come back in 6 minutes at 3 o'clock Mountain Time for the last meditation on emptiness. All right, welcome back. Are there any thoughts or questions before we move on? Oh, okay, so as Venerable Yonten said, her focus was the three principal aspects of the path, which is one way of talking about the results of studying the Lamrim that you get, you achieve. You can talk about being a practitioner of the small scope, the middling scope, or the great scope, or the results of engaging in the practice of the Lamrim, which is to develop the realization of renunciation, bodhicitta, or the correct view of the nature of reality or emptiness. That's what a person is engaging in the practice of the Lamrim to accomplish. As we said, you sort of begin your process of a small form of renunciation on the small scope, and then it's not a renunciation of samsara as a whole, but it's a renunciation of unethical conduct that you know might seem like it's useful, might seem, and it just deepens on the middle scope where you say, well, even just pursuing sensory pleasure, even just pursuing, you know, getting caught up in even in ethical ways, even pursuing them in ethical ways, still is trapping me. So, we turn away from a certain subset of suffering on the small scope by recognizing that, engaging in truly unethical actions gives rise to the worst kinds of suffering. And then it becomes more subtle on the middle scope, where we recognize that we may not be engaging in, unethical actions, killing, stealing, lying, and so on, but getting wrapped up in pursuing, being, having no space in the mind, feeling that the purpose of one's life is to just pursue wealth and power and property and physical kinds of enjoyments, sensory enjoyments, that in and of itself traps a person in cyclic existence. Even if it's the upper realms, it's still not enlightenment. It's still, comparatively speaking, it's still suffering. Um, and then on the great scope, of course, as we just did, we also recognize that it's inappropriate to pursue that liberation for oneself alone, that we should pursue that in order to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. But then, with this contemplation, and of course, the topic, all of these topics, if you were to read Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, if you were to read Practicing the Path by Yangtze Rinpoche, you're going to find whole chapters of all of these topics. So they become quite dense. And this topic of the nature of reality is the most complex of all of the topics. So we're not going to be able to achieve any extraordinary insights, or at least while I'm here, I won't be having any extraordinary insights. I rejoice if any of you have the karma for that. Um, but we can sort of scratch the very surface and try to get some small understanding of the topic through this meditation. But it's something that requires many years of study in order to deeply understand. How to See Yourself as You Really Are by His Holiness is a good book, on the topic, in addition to the chapter that's in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, in addition to the section in Practicing the Path. How to See Yourself as You Really Are is a good introduction, I think, to the topic. But that's what we're going to do, and um, we're going to take ourselves as the object of the meditation. You can take any object as the object of the meditation, um, but we're going to apply it to ourselves, which is, of all of the ways of meditating on emptiness, taking oneself as the object is the most powerful, because the afflictions are part of our mind. And so, uprooting the afflictions really depends upon applying this wisdom to the self. And the afflictions are simply an outgrowth or an extension of self-grasping and self-cherishing, which depend upon misconstruing the nature of the self. Ultimately, so it's also true that it isn't sufficient to, even bodhicitta isn't sufficient. Bodhicitta doesn't really give us the complete path to enlightenment. We have to join bodhicitta with wisdom, understanding the nature of reality. We need those two, and we need the small scope and the middle scope, to get us to the point where bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness are realistic realizations to have. But the wish that we've just cultivated should lead us into strongly wanting to understand the nature of reality, strongly wanting us to have wisdom realizing emptiness, because that is actually the wisdom that does liberate, because it undermines the afflictions directly. It undermines the very, very foundation of the afflictions. Okay, so let's again adopt a stable, upright posture as we have before. And just briefly calm the mind by focusing our attention on the breath. And then bring to mind a memory, one where it isn't too distracting or painful, but one where you felt a sense of embarrassment, or you felt a moment of fear, or you felt a sense of indignation. In these experiences, our sense of identity arises very strongly. When we feel embarrassed or afraid or indignant, our sense of an I, a real me, is asserted very, very forcefully. So think back to that kind of experience. Notice how that sense of a very solid identity was asserted at that time. And try to pay attention to how this I appears. Does it appear to be one with the body? Does it appear to be completely separate from the body? Is it one with the mind? Is it completely separate from the mind? Try to give rise to an understanding that in this memory, the I appears as something very solid, very real, very findable. We think this is happening to me. This shouldn't be happening to me. Why is this happening to me? So there is an appearance of an I, a me, that's findable. And if it does exist in that way, when we look for it, we should be able to find it. And those are the four places that we can look: one with the body, one with the mind, separate from body and mind, or together with body and mind. There's no fifth category. That appearance must be one with the body, one with the mind, together with body and mind, or completely separate from body and mind. So if we begin investigating the body, begin looking for the I in the body, you can think what would happen if we replaced a hand, a foot, an arm, an organ. Would we say, I had a kidney transplant? I lost my right arm. Is there anything in the body that actually is the I, is the source of the I? Do we not often say, my hand, my stomach, my hair, as though the I is separate from the body? Do we not often say, I am writing a letter, I am playing tennis, when it's the body writing a letter, playing a sport? To try to give rise to a understanding through investigating the body, that the I is not one with the body. The I is not findable in the body. Perhaps we think that the I is findable in the mind. If we examine the mind, we see that it is a ever-changing river of mental moments. So which moments are the I? Sometimes there's love in the mind, sometimes anger, sometimes dullness, sometimes wisdom. So how can the I be all of these completely separate mental events? The I that appears as solid as findable, as a real me. The I appears as one thing. The mind is many different things. And again, we often say my arm, my eyes, my ears, my nose. So investigate. Is the I findable in the mind? One with the mind. We may feel as though the I is separate from body and mind, as we sometimes say, my hand hurts, or I am angry. We may feel that the I is owner of body and mind, but yet separate from both body and mind. This is the third possibility. for where to find the I. But if this were true, then we could have experiences that didn't depend on either the body or the mind. We could go and do things without using the body, using the mind. We could have experiences, engage in actions, while the body and the mind were doing other things. Have we ever had such experiences? Is it possible that this I is findable, separate from body and mind completely? We may think that the I is the combination of body and mind. And yet, when we analyze all of the parts of the body, we find nothing that can correspond with the I, the me. When we analyze the mind, we find nothing that directly corresponds with our sense of I, of me. So combining two phenomena that are entirely composed of non-I can't give rise to I, to me, in a findable, real way, in a way that is the same as the way in which the I appears, as solid, as real, as findable. And try to recognize that there is a body, there is a mind. They are interrelated, interdependent. And on the basis of body and mind, the label of I arises. But the I is not findable in the concrete, independent, solid way in which it appears to the mind. It's only findable as that which is imputed, designated upon the combination of body and mind. Try to rest in that unfindability of the appearance of the I, that groundless nature. And then when you're ready, we'll come back together. So with that kind of, contemplation, really that first step, is really important where you're doing what's called identifying the object of negation. It's a very, as I said, as a topic, it's incredibly challenging, to really get the subtle points. Um, but you're not, you don't want to. They talk about the two extremes, the extreme of eternalism and the extreme of nihilism. So the extreme of eternalism is sort of what we what we have right now, kind of this view of a real, findable, permanent, self-existent, truly, solid me that does exist, will always exist, and so on. When we begin to investigate that, we could negate too much. We could go too far, and we could fall into nihilism, thinking that, well, the Buddha said nothing exists, nothing, it's all just fabricated, it's all just, you know, nonsense, it's all just made up. And so it's important to understand that this way of analyzing doesn't negate cause and effect. It doesn't, things that can be empty of inherent existence, they can be empty of existing in the way that they appear, and yet they can still bring results. They can still function. So just because an acorn doesn't inherently exist, it exists as what's called a dependent arising. It does exist, but how does it exist? And yet, when you plant an acorn and you give it water and sunlight and nutrients, reliably it will grow into an oak tree, right? So it can be empty of inherent existence and still it functions, still it exists in a way that can bring a result in the world. And in the same way, positive actions still bring a result. Negative actions still bring a result. The mind, is still a phenomena. The body and mind are still phenomena that that impact, upon the world in various ways. They still exist as phenomena, but the object of negation, the appearance of the I to the mind in that really strong, concrete, independent, as if the I is the owner of body and mind, as if there really is this third thing that is the, puppeteer of body and mind. That is an illusion. That is a fiction. We don't need that in order to explain the I, because we can explain it on the basis of the dependent arising of body and mind coming together and functioning, as a interrelated, interdependent phenomena. Upon that, this experience of the I does validly arise, but that imagined way of existing as the owner of body and mind, and it's not different in terms of, for example, a car. Typically, probably it was a horse or something back 2000 years ago, but now everybody uses a car. You look at a car, there's thousands and thousands of parts of a car, right? And we would look at that and we would say, well, of course, the right front handle is not the car. The right front door panel is not the car. The steering wheel is not the car. The engine is not the car. None of the seats are the car. The roof is not the car. Tires are not the car. And yet, somehow, when you assemble all of those parts, the label of car arises to the mind. And we just look at it and say, well, yeah, that's a car. That's a car out there, separate from me, that has some sort of identity, that has some sort of essence. And that's also not true. So, and it's not true in the same way that our own identity, as it appears to the mind, is not true. There is some phenomena, and yet you can get into a car, and if it has gas and it has a working engine, it will take you somewhere. It will move. You can get in it, and you can go somewhere else. You can get out of it, and now, but it's not going to fly, right? It's going to drive. It's not. It doesn't have it doesn't have a jet engine. You can't take it into the ocean, but you can do something. It will perform its own unique function. It's able to perform its own function. An airplane isn't going to also dive into the ocean or, drive on a highway, but it will go into the sky and in the same way function in its own unique way. So everything is a functioning thing and is yet also at the same time simply empty of it existing in the way that it appears, meaning only that when you search for the label that appears to the mind, when you search for this idea
of a findable essence that seems to be the owner, in the same way that we would say, oh, it's a red car, or it's a nice car, or it's an ugly car. Um, we have this intuitive sense that this essence of car is something that can be the owner of all of the parts of the car. The plane can be the owner of all of the parts of the plane. And that is false. That is an illusion. That is something that we are actively layering on top of what's true about that phenomena. Uh, so we're doing that with regard to ourselves, and we're doing that with regard to everything outside of ourselves, everything that we cognize. So really, this wisdom of emptiness is a critique of how a sentient being develops knowledge about things. It isn't really a critique about anything, about things themselves. It's not asserting anything about things. It's critiquing how we develop our understanding, or how we cognize, how we perceive. And it's saying that when we engage in acts of cognition, acts of perception, we layer on top, we give things a status that's more concrete than what is justifiable, than what is really true about what is being cognized, what is being perceived. We think, oh, that is a car from its own side, outside of me, and I'm just noticing. I'm just going about my day, and I'm kind of powerless to notice that that is a car outside, separate from me. What we don't do is we don't recognize that we're creating that label of car when we're cognizing, when we're perceiving. It's a very, very active process. And we're creating our identity in dependence upon the parts of the body, the parts of the mind, just like we create the concept of car. And then we assent to that label, and we give it an importance, we give it a status that is really only coming from the mind. And when we can see through that, then our impulses become less impulsive. We hold ourselves more lightly when we don't grasp at this real, findable, intrinsic, true me. How dare this happen to me? Why is this happening to me? I need this to not be happening to me. I need this other thing to be happening to me. When we can hold that in a much lighter way, then we suffer less. And why would hatred arise? Why would grasping arise? Why would attachment? If there is nothing that is referring to, if there's nothing, in that findable, concrete, independent way, if that is an illusion, if that is a fiction, then we can let go of things in a way that reduces and ultimately eliminates the afflictions, the, hatred and jealousy. And those are all rooted in this false, overly concretized sense of identity. So ultimately, everything in Buddhism is leading us to this realization of the empty nature of all things, empty of existing in this fantasized, overly concrete way, but not rejecting, not going to the nihilistic view of saying, well, nothing matters, we don't have to care about others, we don't have to generate love or generate compassion, or because they're empty, they're fictions. That's not true. You know, for them, their suffering, just like our suffering is real, their suffering is real for them as they're experiencing it. If they could realize emptiness, then they wouldn't suffer. But until they do, they will suffer. So we need to help them to we need to realize it ourselves, and then we need to help them realize it as well. And then we all become enlightened, and enlightened mind still functions, right? I mean, mind is a phenomena that functions. And so the functioning of mind doesn't change, it doesn't cease, but mind, when it is influenced by affliction, functions in a particular way. Mind that is free from affliction functions in a different way. Just like a car functions in a particular way and a plane functions in a particular way. So when we free the mind from affliction, mind is still doing what mind does. It's still functioning. It's still a phenomena that functions, but it functions differently. It functions as enlightened mind rather than ordinary mind. And that's the goal, is to generate the functioning of enlightened mind in this mental continuum that we possess. Um, but it's very, yeah, it's a very different. So I probably can't answer any questions about that meditation, but um, yeah. So are there any thoughts or questions about today before we wrap up? No. All right. So we'll end with dedication. So when we dedicate, we think about the positive energy that we've created through our practice, and on the basis of understanding karma, the law of cause and effect, we offer that all of that positive energy to others so that we don't, which helps us to overcome kind of thinking, oh, I did this really great thing. How amazing am I? I did this really, but we just give it away. We give it to others, and we don't allow our ego to co-opt our practice in that way. So we begin by recollecting our virtuous intention, our motivation. And we think that by having engaged in these practices, we've followed through, we've actualized that intention, that motivation. By doing that, we have generated positive energy in the mind. And because that positive energy functions, it will bring a beneficial result in the future. That's what positive, constructive energy, positive karma does. So we think that when that positive energy ripens, may it serve as a cause and condition to eliminate war, conflict, poverty, famine, disease, natural disasters, any painful inner or outer conditions. May it also fully ripen the minds of all sentient beings. May they quickly meet perfect teachers. May they arise in the state of full enlightenment. May I too achieve the state of enlightenment so that I might work for the benefit of sentient beings perfectly. I think may any obstacles facing the Guru's long life be completely dispelled. I think may I and all sentient beings in this moment come under the joyful care and guidance of enlightened beings. May we all be guided and protected until we swiftly achieve that state of enlightenment. All right. Well, thank you all for coming.